Hi everyone, and welcome to a brand new brief history of a Disney attraction video. So if you haven't tuned in before, my name is Martyn. I have this channel with my fiancée Helena, and we absolutely love Disney, and we also love trivia and behind the scenes info about Disney park attractions, and that's why we started this series. We actually started this series with a video detailing the Phantom Manor at Disneyland Paris, so we'll put an eye up here in a corner so you can go back and watch that. There was some spooky goings on, but since then I had several suggestions about which attraction I should cover next, but there was an overwhelming winner, and that is what on earth was that? Oh, these videos are cursed, I'm telling you. Oh. What? What? Avast there. It be too late to alter course, mateys, and there'll be plundering pirates lurking in every cove waiting to board. And mark well me words, mateys, dead men tell no tales. In case you haven't guessed, this video is all about Pirates of the Caribbean. Welcome back, mateys! You join me as I pour myself a flagon of rum. Well, not really, it's a Toy Story Disney mug and a cup of tea. I had to do something to calm my nerves, though. Helena's never going to believe what just happened. I don't believe what just happened. Anyway, when researching Pirates of the Caribbean, it became apparent that most of the history and the trivia is locked into the one in Disneyland in California, which of course would be the case because it's the original. So that's what we're going to focus on today. We're going to go back to where it all began. Oh. This is just getting wildly out of hand. Focus, Martyn. So when the original idea was brought up to have a pirate attraction inside Disneyland in California, the premise was something very different to what we see there today. It was actually meant to be a walkthrough featuring waxwork figures of pirates from history. But due to the success of a certain ride called It's a Small World at the 1964 New York's World Fair, it's a small world after all. Sorry, although I do love that song. Due to the success of that ride and the fact that they wanted to get more people into the pirate attraction, they decided they were going to drop the walkthrough and instead, quite rightly, they were going to make their guests set sail. Right, you've all got to go before Helena gets home. In 1961, Mark Davis sat down and put pencil to paper to create concept art for the Pirates attraction. Now, when it came to designing the really bad eggs that were going to adorn this attraction, he decided that he was going to stay away from famous pirates and instead create designs more in line with what the public thought a pirate would look like. The original name of the attraction was going to be the Blue Bayou Lagoon, and it's really cool. You can hear Walt Disney talk about this in an episode of Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color.
We call it the Blue Bayou Lagoon.
It was later named, of course, Pirates of the Caribbean, but a blue bayou does remain, and that is the restaurant that you pass by at the beginning of the ride. It allows you to seemingly dine at night in the blue bayou, even during the day. It's somewhere that I really like to go. Disney legend xxxx started working for Disney in 1938, and he started as an animator, and he worked on projects such as Winnie the Pooh, Fantasia, Mary Poppins and Pinocchio. In 1965 he transitioned over to WED, which at the time was Walter Elias Disney Enterprises, now known as Imagineering. So he became an Imagineer. And according to D23.com, an interview that they did with xxxx a few years ago, it was about 6 weeks in to his contract with WED when Walt rang him up and said, "I want you to work on the Pirates ride." xxxx had never ever worked on a script. He had done storyboards. He was an animator. He'd never done a script for anything, and especially never a script for an attraction or a ride. But he didn't panic. He just took on the job and he started working. He started researching. He looked at the Disney film Treasure Island and he collated all of the information he could regarding pirates. The first thing that he showed to Walt Disney was the now altered auction scene. He went along, showed it to Walt. Walt read it. His heart must have been going. And Walt said, "Fine. Keep going." xxxx also provided some voices for the attraction, including the ominous welcome from the Skull and Crossbones, which I actually quoted a bit of earlier on. And there were some other Disney legends in the recording studio for this attraction. Thurl Ravenscroft, who actually played Tony the Tiger for more than 5 decades, lent his voice to the attraction. And other Disney attractions that he provided voices for were the Enchanted Tiki Room, where he played Fritz, and also the Haunted Mansion, where he is one of the famous singing busts, actually the one that people think looks a lot like Walt Disney, Uncle Theodore, where he of course sings "Grim Grim Ghosts Come Out to Socialize." In Pirates, he plays a lot of the drunken scallywags. Then you've got Paul Frees, another Disney legend, was the original Ludwig von Drake, and then in terms of attractions, he is the unseen ghost host in Haunted Mansion. That is so cool, I didn't know that before this video. And in terms of Pirates of the Caribbean, again recorded many lines of dialogue, but some bits I want to pick out are "Dead men tell no tales." And then also, up until the renovation of the scene, he played the auctioneer. What talent. So it would be wrong of me to talk about the Pirates of the Caribbean ride and to not mention the amazing work that went into creating all of the animatronics that are inside the attraction. There are over 120. No easy feat, especially at that time when they were sort of still in the early stages of creating audio animatronics. Just incredible. And the process of making them, well, they started off as concept art by Mark Davis, then they became miniatures, and then of course you had to make them full scale. So for the look of the pirates, Walt Disney himself was in charge of hiring the actors and the workers that came in to be moulded in clay. And in terms of the actual movements, they would all be recorded by Imagineers so that they could repeat the actions over and over. Just a massive team effort that really makes Pirates of the Caribbean such a special attraction. So Alice Davis was in charge of creating the iconic costumes for the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, and she has stated that it can be quite tricky to dress an animatronic as they are usually either bolted to the floor or to an object. But going back to when Alice was originally creating the costumes, Alice decided that each character would need 2 outfits, just in case something went wrong with the technology, maybe some fluid leaked, it would damage the costume, they would have to close the ride while they made new ones. So she thought, good idea would be to have a secondary outfit. The people at Disney, they didn't agree with that. They said no, they don't need a second outfit, we'll just be able to put one together if we need to. But Alice had great foresight. She decided that she was going to buy double the amount of material. After all, they don't know how much material Alice is going to need to make one set of costumes. So she buys double the amount of material and makes the 2 outfits. And that proved very lucky, because a few months in to the ride, there is a fire. And some of the costumes are damaged because of the fire, and some of the costumes are damaged because of the sprinkler system that went off to shut down the fire. So they go along to Alice and they are saying, how long do you need to make us some new costumes? How long will we have to close Pirates of the Caribbean down? It's a popular ride. How long will we have to close it down? How long do you need, Alice? Alice says, give me half an hour. As a result, the ride was only closed for 1 day following the fire, and I am led to believe that these days each character has 3 costumes each. Yale Gracie was in charge of the effects for the attraction, and one of the most impressive effects is that of the flames of the fire as the town burns. But how do you make the flames? Well, you get a piece of material, you get some coloured lights, and you get a fan. You shine the coloured lights onto the material and then you switch on the fan. Hey presto, you've got flames. Now the effect is so lifelike and so realistic that there is actually a system in place, so if there is a real fire, those flames are shut down. What are you doing?
Oh, it's an effect. Sorry.
Yale Gracie would later go on to work on Haunted Mansion, but I'm sure there'll be more about that in another video. So what I'm really learning from researching the Pirates of the Caribbean ride is just how much of a never-ending input xxxx had. Not only did he write the script, not only did he provide voices, he also suggested another key component. It's the thing that you can't help but hum as you exit the attraction, and that is, of course, the song. He went along to Walt Disney, he performed as best he could what he had in his head at the time. Disney listened, and he said, it's good. Get George Burns to work on the music for you. And then that's how we got yo ho, a pirate's life for me. Arr. Now, unfortunately, this would be the last ride that Walt Disney would work on during his lifetime. He passed away in December of 1966, and though he wouldn't get to see the fully completed ride in New Orleans Square in Disneyland, California, he did get the chance to see what it was going to be like. xxxx has documented that they actually mocked up the ride on a soundstage at WED. Walt came along, they put him in a cart, and they pulled him around this mock setup in this car at roughly the same speed as the boat would travel through the attraction. And when it gets to the auctioneer scene, with at that time the most sophisticated animatronic that Disney had ever produced, when it got to that scene, xxxx was scared. He thought that a terrible mistake had been made with the sound, because all the pirates were talking at the same time and you couldn't really pick up what people were saying. He just thought it was a cacophony of noise, and he thought that Walt Disney would hate it. So before Walt could say anything, xxxx turns to him and he apologizes. He says, I'm so sorry that you can't hear what they're saying clearly. Walt Disney loved it, because he thought it was like going to a cocktail party. He thought it was like all these people in a room talking, but you are tuning in to different people's conversations. And it also meant something great. It meant that every time a guest goes into Pirates of the Caribbean, they could hear something different. They could experience something different. The ride every time would be different and bring up something new. And I just think that's wonderful, because even though he didn't get to see it finished, it's just nice to know that his fingerprints are all over that ride. So the press launch for the Pirates of the Caribbean ride happened on the 19th of April 1967, and judging from the footage from Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Colour, they held nothing back. They went all out. I wish I could have been there. Buccaneers invaded the park in a pirate ship. There was fighting, there was falling into water, there was drinking, there was dancing, and then to open the ride, the pirates actually stormed down the doors. The actual official opening took place on the 18th of March 1967, and the guests loved the attraction. In fact, due to the popularity of the ride, there was a lot of congestion in that area of the park. So in 1987, they built a bridge over the front of the attraction in order to ease this. So with the success of Pirates of the Caribbean in Disneyland in California, it was only natural that when the other parks opened around the world that they would get their own version. However, when Walt Disney World opened in 1971, there were no pirates to be found, and there was no plans to install a ride either. In fact, they were planning on installing the Western River Expedition. The reason being, the company thought that the residents were just too used to pirates. They thought they could get their swashbuckling fixes elsewhere due to Florida's history. They thought wrong. The park opened and guests couldn't help themselves. They were asking, where are the pirates? The company thought for a moment. They scrapped the Western River Expedition and they installed Pirates of the Caribbean. Tokyo opened its Pirates in 1983, Disneyland Paris in 1992, and Shanghai opened its very unique and very original one in 2016. And it's also worth noticing that the Disneyland Paris Pirates of the Caribbean is the only one to have a changing Captain Barbossa. He goes from living to dead. So over the years, times have changed, and so too have the Pirates of the Caribbean rides. So we're going to talk about some of the changes that have been made to the one in Disneyland in California. In 1997, scenes were altered involving the pirates chasing down the women. The object of desire now for the pirates was the food that the women were carrying. The pooped pirate, who was situated next to the barrel with a very frightened girl inside, he now became the gluttonous pirate, and the frightened girl became a cat. Later on, of course, became Captain Jack Sparrow. In 2006, speaking of Captain Jack Sparrow, due to the highly successful film Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl, Disney decided to merge the ride and the film franchise together by introducing some of the characters: Captain Jack Sparrow, Captain Barbossa, and Davy Jones. In 2011, to coincide with the release of Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides, they temporarily changed the projection of Davy Jones into Blackbeard, played by Ian McShane. With the introduction of all of these characters from the films, it's worth noting that all of the characters were voiced by the original actors from the movies. But the biggest changes came in 2018. The projections of sometimes Davy Jones, sometimes Blackbeard, they were removed, and instead the original narration by Paul Frees was reintroduced. No fear have ye of evil curses, says you. Ah, properly warned you be, says I. Ha ha. And the biggest alteration was to the auctioneer scene, that original scene that xxxx showed to Walt Disney. In the original scene, the pirates were bidding on women, but now the redhead woman, who was gaining a lot of attention from the pirates, has now been made into a female pirate who is now helping and heckling the auctioneer as he helps sell loot from the locals. Well, there we are, me hearties. There's the brief history of Pirates of the Caribbean. Ah-ha! I can't keep that voice going. I'm sorry, it hurts. But that's it. Yeah, thank you so much for joining me for this video. I love making these videos, and if you have any suggestions for any attractions you'd like me to focus on next or cover in this series, then put those in the comment section. Also, any info, any trivia that I didn't get to discuss in this video about pirates, make sure you pop those in the comment section as well, because there is just so much to cram into one video. I couldn't cover everything. I didn't even get a chance to mention bromine, 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 bromine. That's the smell you smell on Pirates of the Caribbean. Oh, on that note, we'll be back in our next video. All that's left to say is toodle. I wish you would stop doing that. Pipski! Drink up me hearties, yo-ho!